We are here with John Dewees, our special guest today. He's actually a seasoned entrepreneur and in the technology field. In particular, now he's focused on cybersecurity. And I think for 1 second, I think we might have some connection issues. John, are you here?
I'm here. I'm
Okay,
good.
perfect. I think
Awesome.
you're frozen. You're frozen on the screen, unfortunately.
I can
But
I can stay dancing, so you'll know that I'm moving. If that works
okay,
out.
perfect. Hopefully it's just a little glitch. He's actually very involved in some philanthropic things that I'd like to also for him to use this platform to talk about. But in particular, I'd like to talk about his cybersecurity company related to the Internet of Things and what innovations we're bringing there. And just to bring some context, I'm Ignacio Palomera, the CEO of Bondex, the Web 3.0 professional network for the blockchain industry. And John, welcome to the show. Appreciate you making it. And yeah, I'd love to just give us an introduction about yourself, your background, and your company.
Sure. I have a kind of an unusual background, which looks very strange looking backwards, but it made sense looking forwards. I've been an entrepreneur for 40 years. I started my career after graduating from the University of California as a biologist, quickly moved into basic research in biochemistry, where we were leading the charge on building in vitro testing for human hormones. It was a lot of fun. I did that for a while, but I got bored because I was in a lab all the time. So I ended up actually becoming kind of a version of my dream when I was a child. I wanted to play professional baseball. Well, that didn't work out. So actually I became an actor in theater, a dancer, an actor, went to NYU and got my master's in theater arts, which I pursued for 5 years and had a lot of fun. So now I'm a biochemist. I'm a theater person. Now what do you do? So I became a product developer. Makes sense. And I basically traveled the world. I've traveled the world for about the past 40 years doing product development, various kinds of industries, whether it's textiles, it's been in healthcare, it's been a number of industries, but I focused most recently on really what it means to be a human being. This will all make sense in a minute. So human beings, which I love and adore, I'm especially a big fan of immigrants to come to the United States. Really, we have a place in the universe, and our universe is one to build beauty and sustainability in our work. And what I've seen a lot in my travels in the world is corruption, exploitation, bad uses of privilege and power. And I have in the fourth quarter of my existence on the earth, I'm committed to creating more equity and more opportunities for everybody. How that ties into security and cybersecurity is really based on my belief about trust and how people interact in trusted relationships. So when we know each other and we meet each other and we greet each other, we can assess each other pretty effectively. But there's still some barriers there. But the minute you go online, where are you? You're in space. You're a digit. You become more objectified, not less objectified. And humanization of what needs to happen is a difficult thing to manage. So there's two parts. One of the parts is handled by Bondex, where they really encourage you to grow your personal profile, to be who you are, to share videos, to create your identity and your vision and your power in the universe as an individual. And then have that rewarded by creating secure and valuable relationships with people who would use your services or something that you would share. Underpinning that, all of that is being able to be online and feel secure in your data and feel still to manage the ability to be with people and be seen as an individual. Look, if we don't have strong individuals, powerful individuals, we don't have powerful communities. If we don't have powerful communities, we also don't have strong individuals, and we become vulnerable to people who seek power instead of seeking grace and beauty. So my life is very much devoted to building these trusted platforms. The trusted platform that we built at Cyberus Labs is everything to do with IoT devices, right? So IoT devices, you think of certain things, but when you really start to look at it, IoT is everywhere, right? It's our power grids. There was a time when if you got hacked, oh my God, somebody would steal your information and take $500 from your bank account. In an IoT system, if someone hacks an IoT system, power grids can go down and people die. Airplanes can crash and people die. Cars can be taken over and people can die. It's really very, very crucial that we have secure IoT systems. The IoT platform we felt was broad and is everywhere. the idea of being able to secure all platforms became our driving idea. So in the past 3 years, we've developed this agnostic authentication, encryption, and self-healing platform for IoT devices called Cyberus Labs, based around the authentication protocol called Cyberus Key. We are deployed in Europe. We recently graduated from a large grant program called Horizon 2020. And we are now in the commercial stage of deployment and about to do some really interesting work as well in the United States. Additionally, I'm involved in a company called DataLucent, which is protection of the individual's data. You own your data. It's the rule in the world. You own your data. But yeah, so if you don't protect that data, or you don't have an ally to help you protect that data, who can not only protect it, but also then convert it into opportunities for you as an individual in relation to into brands or the powers that be, you really haven't gone that next way. So we are all about Internet 3.0 and getting into the next level where an individual controls their data and maximizes the value of that data. So that's a very long-winded introduction, and I'm sorry it took too long. But
listen, it's a beautiful introduction. We're very much on the same page in terms of our principles and our morals and how we see the future of the internet and the future of technology and how it should be handled, and especially when it comes to individual sovereignty and how things should be moving that direction, and how blockchain is maybe one of the avenues for that. Secondly, something that touched me is that I was an immigrant into the United States when I was 14 years old. From Spain, actually, maybe not one of those, the struggling minority immigrants that come in from, Latin America, for example, but I know very much what it's like to be culture shocked and to be a minority in the United States. So I was very touched that, that's someone that you have a soft spot for. And lastly, I'm glad that we have someone like you looking out for us in the Internet of Things, because the stereotype has becoming that your Alexa and your Google devices and your phone is listening to you, right? And that's becoming the stereotype of that's like the joke that everyone's going with of your things are listening to you. And I think the only way to secure those is to have companies and people like you looking out for us into keeping those devices secure, right? And so I think that you're doing a fantastic, really, really important job, and I really appreciate that. And before we go into the kind of the blockchain efforts, I'm told that you're also basically a crypto investor. So I'd like to hear more about some of the projects that you're invested there, where your knowledge is of the market. And yeah, what are you interested in the space?
Okay, so crypto is fascinating for a bunch of reasons, and in some of the areas, I'm an investor. In some areas, I'm just an advisor, and sometimes I'm just a believer. So what I like about crypto is that it really does create a chain of trust, because that's my motivation, right? To be able to have anonymous trust is very interesting. There's a lot of pieces that have to go into that. There's still the interface between human and machine, or human, and we talk about that later. But really, I've always thought that Bitcoin, I've thought that for a long time, that Bitcoin was an interesting store of value that was parallel to the history of gold. And it's portable. It's just stable. There's not a lot of it. You have a restricted supply piece of it. So Bitcoin is certainly part of everything that I've done. But I think that there's the store of gold. There's the store of value. There is the platforms on which contracts can be built, and then there are really facile types of blockchains which can create transaction availability. So a basic idea would be, for example, Bitcoin store of value, Ethereum as a platform, XRP, or Cardano as a platform, XRP, where there's really a lot of transaction capabilities. And that's where I focused. I'm really focused a little bit more on what blockchain is for me in our technologies. But crypto I see as a way, as my businesses grow more internationally, as a way to really move fund transfer and smart contracts around very quickly without all of the nonsense that goes on with it. I'm really tired of banks. Thanks. If we can get rid of the lawyers too, that would be better. But that's a different conversation.
That's hilarious. I mean, I hear you. I mean, part of what we're trying to address a wider vision for Bondex is eventually giving banking facilities to all our users so that their professional career can be tied in with their financials and they can transact around the world and make transactions happen seamlessly and cheaper than they do now, right? And also offer people better banking facilities because you have their professional histories there. So you have an idea of their earning potential and you can give them, offer them better or bespoke investment products, and also give them discounts at volume because they're part of a large network, which essentially is as if they were part of a full-time enterprise, right? So I hear you. I hear you in the applications that you see. And then in terms of the security and the product that you've developed, right?
Yes.
Just for me to understand a little bit more, it's a single stack multi-layer technology comprised of platform agnostic authentication with lightweight blockchain for encryption, AI self-healing. When I read that, I mean, it's quite a mouthful. What does AI self-healing mean exactly?
Okay, so when you have a large IoT system, there are physical components, there are sensors, actuators, many components to the system. You may have a system that has legacy components and then has new components built around it, built on top of it, stacked all through it. What we do as you add the IoT actuators, sensors into it, we log that. We keep track of the health of that sensor, of how many cycles it's written. We keep track of its updated. A lot of sensors need updates, for example. So we provide a backdoor that's secure for updating the software that's driving that sensor, that bring it into conformance. And ultimately because it's so complex, we use an AI system that monitors each of the individual sensors, and well in advance of its failure, mean time to failure, we announce that to the system operator, and we can tie that into the IoT sensor manufacturer. So there's an ability here to know exactly in space in space and time, where and when you need to replace that sensor, and also notify the supply chain manufacturer so they can manage demand.
Man, I'm getting the feeling that you have some geniuses working at the company.
That's my partner. It's my partner, Jack. He's a genius. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Because I mean, wow. Because from what we're doing in terms of our building, and also, we're in a historic kind of labor drought or historic labor shortage, and the skills gap for really talented tech people keeps going, keeps widening, because for someone to be building the technology that you're talking about, there's only 25 million developers in the world, or software engineers. And that's a minuscule amount of people compared to all the technology that gets built. You're talking about something out of the future, essentially. And so it's just your business partner. I imagine you have a full team of.
We do, talent. Yeah. So we're based in Poland. My partner,
that's
my
a fantastic
partner,
hub.
Yeah. Okay. So my partner Jack is Polish. He immigrated into the United States when he was 14. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah.
So he came here, and he ended up going, doing what he did, and ended up MIT, worked for Draper Labs, worked for Panasonic, developing high-speed chips and just all sorts of things. But and it actually was the developer of the watermarking that's used commonly today in music identification. So when you go on Spotify, there's a component in there of digital rights DRM that's associated with the watermark. And he basically built that technology. So he and I align not so much on technology. I mean, he's the technologist, but we align on the empowering of the individual. That's really what drives our focus of some of that comes from coming to the United States and being an outsider, right? And not necessarily being able to partake in the community fully until you figure out how to integrate yourself. So what we try to do is minimize the number of steps between the person who's affected and wherever they want to be in life. You're doing the same thing. It's the same model.
I remember that process, because it took me 6 months to kind of really get my English to not have enough of an accent so I could communicate and make friends. And I remember going home the first day I could made a friend, which I think it took me 6 months of living in America. So I know exactly what you're talking about in terms of how that integration works. And I love the mission and your values. I think it's truly amazing to have people in the technology, because I see certain things in the blockchain space, and for example, having Meta build the metaverse now,
Yeah.
and certain things that make it a bit scary. Even though Mark Zuckerberg, and our last guest here is he was actually one of the founders of Harvard Connect, and he's a big
Okay.
supporter of Facebook, and he was explaining that Mark Zuckerberg was not going to control the metaverse. But since you're a cybersecurity expert and I have you here, I think that's what the hottest word of the day is, and the next frontier is. I would love to hear your view of what the metaverse is and what security risks we could find there.
So when you're living in a completely virtual world like that, I mean, my wife is a real estate expert consultant, and she's amazed at how much metaverse real estate's already been developed. So people living in creating real assets in the metaverse, and so we're both trying to catch up on really what that means in terms of what it means to be human. You're taking right what it means to be human. So I go very far in what it means to be human. Maybe not so far into describing what the metaverse does, but I don't feel a natural human connection to the metaverse. It feels like I love sci-fi, and that's where I feel like I am when the minute I step into the metaverse and think of a VR world that has assets built inside of it. It actually makes me feel very uncomfortable.
I have the same exact feeling. I don't think it's the way that I want society to kind of move towards. I kind of would want them to leverage it's virtual reality, augmented reality as much as possible, as many applications. But to build a virtual world that's more valuable to the current world, I think we will lose part of our humanity, and it scares me. That's why I'm asking you about some of the risks that I mean, dehumanization, clearly a risk, right? Society, I think you see in some, for example, Asian cultures that they're having, China just banned so much video game use in their youth, right? It's probably because they're seeing some sort of societal and cultural impact, negative impact, right, to their population, that they wanted to decrease or control video game use, right?
Yeah.
So I imagine if you have like unregulated, unlimited kind of like Inception, like playground to go, a lot of people are not going to want to hang out in the real world or make an effort, right?
Well, I can tell you that the real world here that we have is hard.
Yeah,
it's hard to build relationships that are based on trust and opportunity and shared value sets, right? It demands a level of communication that most people are not very good at. I think what I saw, even with my own son, who was a little bit addicted to video games at one point, until some guy who was his father took the scissors out, who now has now a very successful son. That it is addictive. There's an addiction to not having to really confront who you are as a human being in face-to-face relationships with other people, and stepping into the metaverse where you can define who you interact with. You can almost create your own world based on what makes you comfortable. Doesn't sound like a path forward for being fully developed as a breathing, living organism on the face of the earth and in the universe.
I completely agree with you. I mean, it's a bit scary. I hope there's people that have your ethos and our ethos of Bondex to build public, to be a public metaverse, and the public blockchains to win, and sort of some good actors that have the right mindset to go build a metaverse. And I think there will be, I think they're out there, and I have faith in humanity. I'm hoping it goes in the right direction, essentially.
I agree with you. I do agree with you that there's a blend, but the blend and the effectiveness of that blend will rely on human communication, effective human communication, and an acknowledgement of our shared futures.
And the problem that I see, though, is that the only case study that I have to base what's going to happen there is what we have had happen with social media today and our current networks today, which have become completely data monopolies, right? And if these people are the same people who are going to build the metaverse, it's just going to be a whole repeat of profits before first people, profits before user, and not sovereign individuality, right? And that's what we're fighting at Bondex. What we're fighting at Bondex is It's your data, right? You're giving your professional data. We don't want you to be the product. We want you to be a real stakeholder. You get to decide whether your data is exploited or not, and if you want to, kind of engage to earn as part of that. But for that, I think blockchain and Web3 essentially needs to disrupt the disruptors that have now become those tech monopolies.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping happens.
I'm with you.
And I wanted to ask you, in the IoT sphere and what you're working on, what does the talent market look like today? What are the future of jobs there? Do you see a booming job market in that field? Give us a bit of insight of what the talent market looks like for you.
Right. So imagine, basically, here's what it is. This is the way we see it. This is the way we are defining it, and what we're putting all of our bet on this. IoT devices that require authentication to interact with, which are most all IoT devices. Every time you bring an IoT device into your world, you log in on something, even your computer, you're basically increasing the amount of surface area of your existence, of your identity, of who you are in the universe. And the increase in surface area creates more vulnerabilities, especially where there's a junction, where there's an interface between two IoT devices, where there might be an API interface translating data from one state to another state to move it up the chain. So the idea that we have IoT devices that are not properly authenticated or the data is not encrypted creates a lot of vulnerabilities for people. We're working currently now with one of the foremost identity management companies in the world, and we are really diving deep around the world with identity management and what that means, and how it means an interface with human to human, human to machine, machine to machine. What do identities mean, and how is that a vulnerability? So when you look at the expansion of IoT is on its way to $1 trillion, right away. And that means,
once the technology is final, what's the current market size, just for?
It depends on how you define it, but just on the software development side alone, it's $50 billion, maybe more. I think it's more. We have a tough time getting understanding what the TAM is, and we just can't keep up. It's growing so fast because everything that's being built now is some sort of IoT device, right? Everything has, and everything needs to be authenticated, and everything needs to have some sort of encryption around it, because each one of those. There's a famous example of a casino in Las Vegas, no less, that was hacked and lost millions of dollars through a hack that started with a temperature gauge in a fish tank in the casino.
No.
Yeah.
That sounds. I mean, that's a movie right there.
Yeah.
So the hack started because an IoT device, which was a thermometer. In an aquarium, and that's how they got inside of the system. And
that's how yes, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. And most hacking is still done the old-fashioned way, is phishing. But that's a username password, right?
I mean, they were fishing with the fishes there.
They were fishing. They're fishing, and they hooked a really big, multi-million-dollar fish. That's famous. Well, even the Colonial Pipeline, for example, was hacked because username password. Username password.
That was it.
Username password. And the only thing that the hack was, all they did was disrupt the ability for the IoT devices to measure how much fuel was being taken from the main pipeline. So since they could no longer understand what the flow was, they couldn't send the bills. So they stopped the pipeline, not because the pipeline wasn't working. The pipeline was fine. They just couldn't send the bills to the right people. That's what the hack was, and it was username password.
Wow. I remember that one, and then there was the meatpacking hack. That was the other one that really, it felt like, I mean, I think they were both blamed to China or Russia, right, of trying to undermine American infrastructure. That was the oil attack, and that was a meatpacking attack, right? But those are usually, I guess that's a way in the blockchain technology in cryptography is way superior, right? I mean, I feel that my wallet with my key is much more secure, right, then I think maybe my bank account and someone could do so. I mean, I feel more vulnerable. I think it was my Bank of America account. Someone tried to hack it, and then they kicked me out of the bank because someone tried to do fraud with my account. I don't know how they got it, probably through some of my devices, right? I probably got hacked.
Yeah.
And then someone tried to do some wire thing on it. I still didn't get to the bottom of it. And then the bank kicked me out because they did not have good security on their side. And they thought I was vulnerable and I wasn't worth their time. And they kicked me out. Which as you say, I mean, I think that the bank's time, I don't think it's going away anytime soon. The whole
No,
bank
they have their place.
They have their place, of course. But I think there's just a better way to do it. And part of it is blockchain technology has a more secure way. So that's why I guess you saw the value of blockchain in security, in cybersecurity, and that's why you started developing a tool in that direction, right?
Yes, our tool is built around single time blockchains, layered on top of each other. That's what we do, and it's really unhackable.
Wow, that's a big statement right there. I hope we don't have any hackers watching now that are going to take that as a challenge. Or if they do, I guess you're not scared because you're unhackable.
We're not really scared, and we would invite them to work with us, and we would create a reward system. Our job is to be information asymmetric. Our job is to create security in the world. So if someone brings a value, even for hacking what we do, right? If someone are able to do that, we would welcome them into our team.
I find that a fantastic approach. I really like the way you think in general, and I wanted to ask you, I guess you've started in Europe, so you've been involved on a grant level with some governmental systems. So I want your also a bit of your experience of what was it like to work with governments,
sure,
and institutions like that.
So Europe is a different place, right? There's a different mindset.
I'm in London, by the way, just so you know.
Oh, you are?
Okay. I'm from Spain and I've lived in the US, so
okay.
I know what you're talking about.
So in the European system, the EU, imperfect as it is, right? They do understand the value of public-private partnerships in creating new opportunities. You have a tremendous amount of really crappy legacy systems in Europe. They've been there a long time. For example, in Poland, where we're based, part of our base is there. There's no real effective water monitoring system in the country. So, for example, if someone left their tap on in their house, there would be no way to know that. And the water could just run and run and run and run, and no one would ever know because there's no meters.
There's no meters, period.
There's no meters that are effective at the way that modern life needs to be effective. And we know that water, good, clean water, in many places, it's an impossibly scarce resource. But in the world, it's an important resource because the core of human, our bodies are 75% water.
Yeah, no, it's we're mispricing that asset, and eventually, when we run into shortage, then we'll start pricing it properly.
Price it properly, but pricing it properly means in paying for it properly.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You pay for it properly, and one way you pay for something properly is to be able to monitor it effectively. So not only do you need to monitor the quality of the water, but you also need to understand how it's being used, when it's being used, and so the idea that Poland has no water management system is a problem. So the EU has determined that some of these public-private projects could be, for example, creating a monitoring system for the water system in Poland. Start small, build a model. Guess what? It's all IoT devices. All of it.
That's where you come in.
And that's what we do. We secure the IoT devices to make sure no one hacks them, no one falsifies it, no one steals the water. Also, it provides supply chain management. Right. So the EU, in their wisdom, are creating these public-private opportunities. They have an opportunity called Horizon. So we were part of the Horizon 2020 project. I believe there's a new project called Horizon 2026. They fund this project. There's a very rigorous application process leading into to various levels of award, which are grant awards. There's no equity, but the beautiful thing is that everything that they do is very heavily scrutinized for viability, for impact, and it's also rewarded with higher levels of grants available depending on what segment you're playing in.
So
And so
even though they're not taking equity, they're making sure they get a return on their investment in terms of
you're right.
impact. They're very
Right.
rigorous about it, essentially.
Very rigorous. So the beautiful thing is, for example, when we entered the program with our idea about creating an authentication and encryption platform for IoT devices, it really took about 8 months, and we had to have professional help to do that. But every step along the way, we had scientists and others who were helping us clarify and create milestones for us that were obtainable, feasible milestones, and that they would make sure that we stayed on our commitment. And we were always under the auspices of GDPR compliance. So when we exited last year, we received the highest grants that they had made available, and we came in a little bit under, and we over-delivered. We delivered early, better, and a little bit under, right? We got our full grant. We were GDPR compliant. So GDPR compliance in Europe is a no-brainer. What people don't realize is that with the IoT, there's awareness in Europe is already coming. It's already established in some ways that there will be penalties for not maintaining the security in your IoT systems, because they're very crucial. We all know about
I think Europe is the only thing that they're forward thinking more than the US is in the regulation of big tech. That is the only thing that they are more strict or rigorous about. That I think the US, that it's more forward thinking than almost everything else. But that's I'm glad to hear what you're saying. So there's going to be, if Alexa is not secure by Amazon themselves, they will get in trouble.
Yeah, no, and with fines. This is not you're going to be shamed, publicly shamed. No, you're going to be fined. And the fines are stiff. Are you aware that right now GDPR compliance with regards to individuals, the fines are immense?
I'm well versed because we've made sure that we have all the right cookie policies and we're GDPR compliant essentially just for Bondex in general. And we realize it's a big deal and we don't want to pay. The fines are, I think if your website doesn't have the right settings and it's not official, it could go into the hundreds of thousands, even for a small business, right? So it could quickly put you out of bankrupt you.
Yes,
exactly. John, just to be respectful of your time, we usually try to keep it 30 minutes. You're fascinating man to talk to, but there's one thing that we like to do at the end of our episodes, our Bondex episodes here, which is, you're an investor in infrastructure, you're well-versed into cryptocurrency, you're more of a cybersecurity, but you've been an tech entrepreneur for 40 years. So I'd like to hear from you. You've seen the rise of this bull market. When do you see it ending? When do you see it? What's your view on the market conditions essentially into the new year as the year ends? How long do you think the bull market's going to go on for? When do you see a crypto winter? What's your view on that?
Okay, so I believe that the internationalization of what we do has its challenge with leaving people behind, but ultimately it's raising the level of the sea in a nice way. It's raising value for everybody. As long as governments don't really screw up their fiscal and monetary policies, they don't get too crazy. The US is a little bit off right now, I think. As long as they stay steady with this, the level of entrepreneurship, the level of creativity, the level of opportunity does not stop. It is endless for people. So if it's reflected accurately, the value created, if the market's reflecting accurately, they're going to be not synchronous for a while. They're going to get out of whack a little bit. But I don't see that our bull market, quote, bull market ends because humans aren't ending. Humans continue to grow and continue to create new value and new opportunities for people. And as long as even your work is raising the level of the individual. That has a trickle-up theory, right, associated with it. As individuals become more valuable and have a better understanding of their value in the system, and they're able to share that value, and other people are able to utilize and share the value that's now presented to them, the markets go up. It'll go down. We have a history. If you look at the long-term history of markets, they tend to go up because human beings are getting better at what they do.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think if we're going to be, I mean, our team has shown tremendous capacity for execution, and the project's getting a lot of traction. If we're able to realize our vision, I think it's going to be very positive for the blockchain markets in general, because also our use case and our case studies in the real economy, taking talent fees from companies that are looking for talent, and then as you're saying, raising the value of the individual so he transparently can know what he's worth, his skills are worth. And not just that, give them the tools to upskill and reskill according to what the market needs, so they can fill those gaps, make the whole economy more efficient, and also for them to have more wealth and bring more value.
That's right. No, can I close? I'm going to close this. I guess we're closing. I want to close with one thing that's very obvious to me, having been a manufacturer for so many years. In the early days of manufacturing, when Asia first started coming to be a powerhouse in manufacturing, there was a maker in a village who sold to an aggravator in the next village, who sold to an exporter in the port town, who sold to a distributor, an importer into the United States, who sold to a distributor in a state, who sold to a local retail store, who sold to an individual. Now you go online and you type in something, and 3 days later it shows up on your door because the supply chain disappeared. So what really has happened is the awareness of what's available shortens the supply chain and decreases the cost of things and increases the effectiveness of things.
And I think the next frontiers for that, what we want to do is to shorten the supply chain in the exchange of labor and skills for time and money. That's
exactly
plain and simple. You got it. You got it, John.
Exactly.
Guys, I appreciate everyone that's listening. John, it was really a true pleasure to have you, and please stay on to chat with me for a few minutes offline. And to all the Bondies out there, thank you for coming in another episode. We'll have one more tomorrow. Thank you all. A true pleasure, and keep up with our top 5 news coming out tomorrow. Thank you very much.